All right, and away we go. Welcome everybody to the June edition of the You Already Own It Cloud Office Hours. I'm super excited about this month's topic. First, let me introduce you to the You Already Own It team. So the You Already Own It team is myself, Bob Ballard. I'm the principal cloud strategist here at Planet Technologies, along with newcomer Nia Giles, George Scott, Ken Nubler, Scott Dowling. Of course, we have Mary Tucker that keeps us all in line and all under the guidance of our VP, Steve Winter. We have an exciting group of folks that I'll let our Vice President, Jen Mason, introduce when she comes on about who's going to talk to us today about working post-COVID. So why don't you go ahead and advance to the next slide for me, Jen? So don't forget, as always, right, that you can reach out to the You Already Own It team as part of your You Already Own It benefit. The address is, and if I can say You Already Own It one more time in a 30-second span, I think I win a prize. It is You Already Own It at go-planet.com. That grabs the whole team. Whether it's questions and concerns about more information about today's presentation, whether it's, hey, I need somebody to review some of my licensing, whatever it might be, just feel free to reach out to us there. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm super excited. I'm about to turn it over to you, Jen. The agenda for today, we're going to talk about working together post-COVID. Some of the ever-changing dynamics, that we're having to deal with today. I think a lot of people can get our heads around, okay, this is what it feels like to work in the office, and this is what it feels like to work remote. But I have a stunning suspicion, and I think everybody else is in alignment with me, is there's going to be some extended period where we're sort of living in both, right? So there's a lot of really interesting scenarios that we're going to talk about with some fantastic demos and some open Q&A. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jen.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's so great to be here with you guys today. I'm Jennifer Mason. I'm the Vice President of Workforce Transformation and Learning over at Planet Technologies. I work with the Evolve team, and we really help people try to learn to do things differently, look at business process and say, how are we going to apply this technology to business process? How are we going to do things differently? And one thing that we have been focused on in the last few months is that the only constant we have seen is change. Nothing is certain anymore. It's, am I going to the office? Am I staying home? When I'm staying home, am I having virtual meetings? Am I going to take a paper process? It's no longer allowed to be a paper process because we're not touching paper anymore, and I'm not walking to so-and-so's office. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do when I'm in a meeting now and I'm no longer 20 people in a room? I'm 4 people in a room and 16 people across 16 different locations. What am I going to do with something as simple as a whiteboard? And how am I going to have this meeting? And oh yeah, the 4 people that are in the room, they're wearing face masks. So how am I going to know what their body language is, and how am I going to convey what's going on for them and the rest of everyone else? And so we're going into a new world and a new dynamic, and we have some incredible tools for people to use, but we're going to need to help them. We're going to have to help them feel comfortable with the change, but we're also going to have to help them feel comfortable with the technology. A lot of that is going to be in the tone, in how we talk to our users. Is this something where I'm going to, gently guide them and suggest to them, show them some features and give them some ideas of what they can do? Or is it going to be something very prescriptive where I say, this is the problem and this is how you're going to solve it using these steps? I think we're going to have to be pretty wise when we go through how are we going to do those different things, because we're probably only going to get so many times where we're going to say this is how you have to do it. So we're going to want to find the right blend between those. So at Planet, we have a lot of tools that can help you do that. We have an entire OCM practice. I'm sure you've heard from Pierre quite a few times. I know he's done a You Already Own session just a little bit ago, as well as on Evolve, we have some learning workshops that we can come in and do and say, how are we helping our people learn to use these tools, and how are we just even communicating with them, and what are the different styles and how are we going about it? And so today what we wanted to do is just say, okay, let's look at some of the complaints, some of the concerns, some of the, oh my goodness, that we've run into so far already with our customers as they're going back into the office post-COVID, and say, okay, how are we dealing with it? What kind of training are we putting together? What kind of scenarios are we working through? And how are we solving that using Office 365? So I've got an amazing team of learning strategists here today. We've got Tamara, Julie, Maria, and Christy. You will meet know better. They are amazing. So I'm going to put myself on mute and let them take it away, and they're going to run us through demos. I am going to be watching the chat. So if you guys have any questions as we're going over anything, please let us know. And also, if you see anything that looks of interest to you, please reach out to the email that Bob mentioned, because we have a lot of this content ready to go. And this is stuff that we can work with you and your customer base on immediately. So we'd love to interact with you, hear your feedback, and help you get content to some of these features and resources that we're showing you. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it first over to Tamara, who's going to talk to us about knowing who is working where.
Thanks, Jen. So one of the things that we're going to need to know is who is where and when. So we'll have some people working from home, we'll have some people working from the office, we'll have some people working from other places. And we want to know the best and quickest way to contact them. So knowing where they are is very helpful. If we go to the next slide. So one of the things we have available to us are scheduling tools within Teams and within calendars. So a couple quick ways to deal with where are people is Teams shifts, the team status message, and calendars, like a shared group calendar. And if we go on to the next slide, there's a little bit about shifts. You can color code on-site versus off-site. Bid for the on-site spaces. So let's say you're only allowing 20 people back into the office so that you can maintain social distancing. So people can bid for those on-site spaces, and also request vacations. So you can have all this information in one place, a one-stop shop, if you will. And then we talk about group calendars. So consider creating categories for working remotely and working in the office. And that's going to help your team quickly see who is where just with that color coding view. So let's take a look, and also consider coming up with a naming convention for your group calendars. So you have the name of the person and whether or not they're remote or they're in the office. So let's do a demo of shifts, and then I'll pass it off to Julie, who will take us into status messages and group calendars. So let's take a look at Teams. In order to get to shifts in Teams, we go to the ellipsis for the more added apps, and we go ahead and we type in shifts. Click on it, and it's going to open up a shift for whatever team you were most recently on. This is the retail one. And I've already added people. If I wanted to add more people to the schedule, I go to the add people icon, click on that, and just start typing in a name and click add. Close it, and the new participant is added to the schedule. If I want to add whether or not this person is working on-site or off-site, I can click the ellipsis and choose add shift. And I can say that blue is actually working on-site, and they're working from 8 to 5. So they're going to be putting in 9 hours. They'll take an hour-long lunch. I can also choose to show this as a 24-hour calendar or just as the regular 12 o'clock to 12 o'clock calendar. One of the things that's interesting here is you can also add activities, like perhaps they're going to be doing training from 8 to 8:15 because they're using Evolve, so they have that micro learning, so they can just slip in some extra training. Go ahead and click done. That training is available here now in the schedule. Go ahead and click save. As opposed to share. Saving it allows me to continue working in this schedule and adding additional shifts before I share it with the rest of the team. So what we want to do is we can also add an open shift. This means that it's not assigned to anybody. And perhaps what we want to do is say that we have on-site shifts and we have 6 slots. That means people can request to work on site, and it will allow up to 6 people to request this. So we go ahead and save this. And then when people go into requests, they can add a new request and they can say they want time off, they want a swap, or they want an offer. And they can choose which shift they want to offer, to who they want to offer it to, and then add a quick note and send the request. In settings, you can choose the time zone and the closest city. You can also choose the start of the week. So you can choose whether or not to start on Sunday, or perhaps you want to start on Monday. You can have the requests that are available. You can have the unpaid, vacation, sick day. You can also add custom options. And then one of the other things that's offered here is the time tracking and reporting. So you can actually set up a time clock for this calendar, for this shift. Going back to the schedule, you'll notice that the days go across the top and the users are here vertically. Also, if you have a schedule all set up that you like, you can use copy schedule. If you use copy schedule, you then just put in the new date range that you want the new schedule to be, and it will include all of the information, or you can choose what to include. So you can pick and choose what gets copied over. Once you're done setting up your schedule, you can choose Share with Teams and pick which week you want to share with the team. It's showing that there's 1 assigned shift and 1 open shift. Do you want to notify your entire team or just the affected team members? So if you've just added a shift for 1 person and you want to republish out the new calendar, perhaps you just want to notify the 1 person. So you can go ahead and click share, and that will share your calendar or your schedule with the rest of the team. The more options icon allows us to undo what we've just done, view a shared schedule, recall a shared schedule. So let's say I put that schedule out there to my team and I made a mistake. I want to recall it. Refresh it so it publishes again. I can also export the schedule to a spreadsheet so I can look at it in that format. And when I'm creating the schedule, I can actually import from a spreadsheet. And then there's some help, and then there's information about shifts. So that's a quick demo of how shifts can help you know when people are on site or off site. And you can have it all available at a quick glance. Now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Julie, who is going to talk about setting the status message and doing group calendars.
Thank you, Tamara. That's a great demo. Thank you for going through that. The things that I want to talk about today are how to set a status message in Teams. So there's 2 things that are really simple and available to you without having to make any adjustments to what you're doing right now. So status messages in Teams are a newer resource to us, but essentially they're located in the profile dropdown, and it says set a status message. So this is great if I'm actually working remotely or if I'm on site. I can write notes about what my day has planned. I can @mention people as well. So let's just say working remotely. And then if I want to show this to people who are @mentioning me, so one thing to note is that this status message will show above the chat window if someone is trying to get a hold of you. So that's what the little checkbox is. And we have some pre-built filters on when this message will go away. Today, always good for if you're setting a status for the full day. The other thing to note is that when you're done with this, you can always go back in and delete or edit it. So if one of those pre-built filters isn't going to work for you, maybe you're doing a half day in the office, maybe you're doing, a little bit, in one location versus the other, you can actually change this as much as you want. And then you simply delete it when you're ready to remove the status message. So that's a really great tool. And again, it's just built in. It's easy for you to get to. There's nothing you have to do to set it up. It's available to you in the Teams environment. And the other thing that I'm going to just mention to you is the group calendars or shared calendars. This is another feature of Office 365 that's giving you a tool for showing your schedule or sharing your schedule with others that's built into the tools that you're already using. So if you have a team or if you have an Office 365 group, this group calendar is actually available to you without having to create it, set it up, share it, or anything like that. So if I jump over to my Outlook calendar, what you'll notice is that on the left-hand side, I have my calendar, which I can select and show. And then I also have any group calendars that I'm a member of listed here. And so for a specific team, if I have this calendar selected, this is actually going to show for all members of that team in this groups dropdown in their Outlook environment. This is also true for the desktop application if you prefer to use Outlook, the Outlook client, but all of the groups that you're a member of will show for you. Now, to Tamara's point about creating events or schedules that showcase to others where you're working, if we go ahead and create a new event on this calendar, this group calendar, all I have to do is kind of set the invitation up like I would. It doesn't have to have a Teams invite or anything like that. It doesn't have to have, it doesn't even have to have attendees. But you can notify your team by adding them as an attendee. So making naming conventions helps a lot when you're creating these types of scheduling events. So if I want to let my team know that I'm going to be either in the office or remote, all I have to do is, let's say, type my name, do a dash, and say on-site. We'll capitalize it just for. All right, so if I want to say I'm on site, then the other thing that you can do is create categories for these items. So Tamara was using blue for on-site, so I can use that as well. Just as an example, now you can manage and create categories in Outlook if you prefer to use a different color or a different name. That's totally fine. But whatever your team decides to use for these types of messages, then it would be consistent and a visual cue to people as soon as they come to the calendar, they can see where you're working any given day. Now, if I wanted to add my team to this, I don't have to type them in individually. I can actually choose this Mark 8 project team, and it pops up for me, which is great. And then I just add them, and this will then notify each member of that team and will add it to their personal calendars as well. So even if other members of your team or group are not actively looking at the group calendar, it will still show on their calendar, which is pretty great. You can also make this an all-day event. I would suggest that, of course, if you're going to be working off-site or on-site all day. But again, just a nice visual cue, and then we hit send, and that will go to the team and also add it to my calendar. I forget which day I put that on. Sorry. But essentially, that's how easy it is to use group calendars to show where you're going to be throughout the day, throughout the week. Maybe you're doing Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office, and then, Tuesday, Thursday at home. Really depends on your schedule, but it's easy enough to set up recurring meetings as well if you have that set up in your team, if you guys have decided who's going to be in the office on which days and things like that. So that's the demo for the status messages and group calendars. I'll go ahead and pass it back to the team.
Thanks, Julie. So I am going to be going next, and I'm going to be talking about all the different types of meetings that are going to be taking place now, which could consist of in-person meetings, virtual meetings, or hybrid meetings. Okay, so first let's go ahead and start with in-person meetings. So meetings in the office, they may look a little bit different than they did before. And some of these barriers include everyone may be required to wear masks in the office, which Jen pointed out earlier. So that would prevent you from seeing other people's facial expressions. So maybe you're not really sure how they're reacting to your comment. Or just the inability to hear each other because everyone may be super spread out in the conference room instead of, all being right next to each other. You might be that 6 feet apart, so it may be hard to hear across the room from each other. But there are a few ways that we can overcome these obstacles. So I know we've been using Microsoft Teams a lot for our virtual meetings, but we don't want to forget about some of these technologies for our in-person meetings as well, because they can also be super useful. So it's a great idea when you're starting your meeting in person to actually go ahead and start a Teams meeting. You can then display that meeting up on the screen. That way the presenter can share their desktop just like they did in a virtual meeting. That way everyone can see, what's going on up on the screen as opposed to sitting next to somebody and looking at their screen or looking over someone's shoulder because we have to keep that 6 feet distance. So that's just a great way to utilize Teams and present it up on that screen. Also, it's a great idea to record the meeting just like we're doing today. And by recording the meeting, everyone can go back and look at the recording in case they missed something because they, for example, couldn't hear what was being said. You can also utilize the notes portion of the meeting and display it on the screen. So this enables everyone in the meeting to be on the same page, visually see what the main points are, and also enables everyone in the meeting to contribute to those notes in case they feel like their point isn't being heard, that kind of thing. And once again, you can still continue to use that chat feature to post important documents or links to a website and that sort of thing. One thing, though, to consider with in-person meetings is maybe it's not the most practical idea to have an in-person meeting. Maybe the most practical idea is to have a in-person virtual meeting at your desks by using Teams. So just something to consider there. Okay, next we'll be moving on to virtual meeting tools. So a few tools for an effective virtual meeting are making sure you're utilizing all of the rich features in Microsoft Teams. So you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that file collaboration feature while in a meeting, and this enables everyone to be in a document at the same time, looking at it and working together. Also, file sharing within Teams. It's a great idea to share the agenda for the meeting before the meeting. That way everybody knows what's happening in the meeting, and also everyone can be prepared for what they're supposed to be speaking about. And that way the meeting just runs a lot more smoothly. Also, make a note to share your screen and to work on documents and material together through screen sharing. And turn on your video. Turning on your video adds a much more personal element. That way you can actually see each other's faces, and we don't have to wear a mask right now, so you can see our facial expressions, so that's a good thing too. And also make note of the new hand raising feature. So lots of times when there's a lot of people on a meeting, sometimes people feel like they can't be heard, but that new feature, hand raising, make sure that everybody gets the attention that they need and gets to ask questions if they need to. And also use the participant list. Maybe use the participant list to take roll or just to see who's on the meeting in general. Okay, and then on to the next slide, we'll talk about some virtual meeting etiquette that you can keep in mind. So make sure not to multitask because it can be very distracting for people on the call. If you're like looking out the window or if you're typing on your keyboard, that's really loud. And so it's very hard to hear people when everyone's multitasking. So treat it like you're in a real in-person meeting because you wouldn't be doing that in an in-person meeting. Also, make sure to remain on mute and avoid any background noise if you're not speaking because even the air conditioning can sound really loud. Make sure if you're in a big group, to announce yourself before talking. Just introduce who you are, which I actually didn't do just now, but my name is Christy Wine, and just so that everybody knows who's talking. And also call on individuals, because it's tough, and I'm sure everyone's experienced this, but when you're in a virtual meeting and you ask a question and then everybody speaks up at once, and then it just gets really distracting. So make sure you call on people so that way just one person speaks at a time. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about hybrid meetings. So hybrid meetings are going to consist of holding a meeting with some individuals in the office and some are going to be off-site. So like Julie and Tamara were just talking about with the schedules of who's on site and who's off site. So one of the big barriers here is that individuals who are not in the office, they may feel like their ideas are not being heard or not valued as much as those that are in the conference room in the meeting. So some ways to overcome this are to, once again, be in a Teams meeting so that they can hear what's going on as well, but to also use the whiteboard. The whiteboard is a great tool to take notes, jot down ideas, that sort of thing. And a great idea would be maybe to have somebody who's not in the office be in charge of the whiteboard. That way they feel like they're more involved and more engaged, as opposed to having someone in the office take charge of the whiteboard. You can also use OneNote to ensure that everyone's ideas are documented. With OneNote, everybody in the meeting is able to collaborate on that document. So, if someone from home doesn't feel like their point's getting across, they can certainly use that OneNote to jot their ideas down as well. Some suggestions for leading a collaborative meeting are using the roundtable approach. That way everyone has a chance and feels comfortable talking. Some people at home might not feel comfortable because they just feel disengaged due to not being in the office. So use the participant list to actually go through that and give everyone a chance to talk and speak in the meeting. Also, once again, use that hand raising feature so that those at home make sure that they are heard as well. All right, so I just want to demo a few things that I talked about here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just join a meeting real quick that I had set up. I want to show you guys how to record and then use that whiteboard. Okay, so I just joined the meeting here. So in order to use the whiteboard during a meeting, I'm going to go ahead and hit this share button, and down here, it's loading for a second. Okay, so here it gives me the option to use whiteboard. So I'm going to pull that up. And it's going to give me the option and take me out to the application itself, or to just use whiteboard in Teams. So I want to go ahead and just use whiteboard in Teams. This allows me to write and everybody can see what I'm writing here. And then if I want to close out of that, I'm just going to hit this stop presenting right now and it will make the whiteboard go away. And then in order to record a meeting, which is important so that users can go back and make sure they didn't miss anything, or if they did miss anything, and all I will do is hit start recording. And it will display up here that I'm recording. And then when I'm ready to stop, I just go to more actions, the little ellipses right here, and I hit stop recording. Okay, and then I talked about using OneNote. So in order to use OneNote, you go to more actions, hit show meeting notes, take notes. And this is just like OneNote here. So it's going to allow me to add different sections and anything that I need to. So here you can add different sections at the top, and then you can add information in here. And then I can add a new section by hitting this little plus button and do whatever I need to do. And then I don't need to save it or anything. I just click the X and it'll automatically save for me. And then the last thing I want to show you is the new hand raising feature. So as you can see here, we have a little hand. I hit raise hand, and then where you can see this raise hand is if you go over here to these two little people and you hit show participants, it'll come up over here and it'll show you this little hand next to the admin button, the admin name, and you can see that I asked a question. That way the presenter can call on the individual who raised their hand. If I change my mind and I don't need my question answered, I can lower my hand by doing that. Okay, so now you might wonder, okay, now where is my recording and where are my notes? So I'm going to hang up the call here and show you where you can access that. So I did this meeting in this communication channel. So the notes for the meeting are actually going to display right in that channel, and the meeting recording is still loading right now, but it's working to upload to stream at the moment, and it will actually display right here as well. Your meeting will actually show up in the chat also. So I'm in a demo account, so it's not doing it for me right now. But if you do start a meeting, it will actually show up right here as a meeting. You can click on that and it'll have your notes, your recording, and then there will actually be a whiteboard option up here at the top where you can see the notes I took for my whiteboard. And that will work in your environment like that. So I think that is all I had to cover. So now I'm going to pass it over to Maria, and she's going to talk to us about staying connected with your coworkers while social distancing.
Hey, Christy, before we get there, there was a question about meeting transcripts. Do you know anything about the meeting transcripts and getting recorded? And if not, I'm going to pass it over to Miguel and Bob, and they can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, let's pass that over to them.
Yeah, Miguel or Bob, do you want to come off? Thanks.
Sure, I'm here. So yeah, so you have the ability to turn on live captions, so that you can actually see transcriptions live during the session, and it's actually in that same little ellipsis bar. I'm not sharing my desktop right now, but it's in that same little three dots. You see turn on live captions and preview. But even if you didn't turn them on, when the meeting is stored, so I don't think, so we talked a little bit about recording, right? But the thing to be clear about is those recordings are stored in Stream. And when those recordings are placed in the Stream repository, Microsoft will actually automatically crawl the video content and actually do a best effort transcription of the entire meeting. Which will allow you to do things like search through those meetings for content. So why this is important is, from a productivity standpoint is, let's say your meeting was an hour and a half and you needed to remember when, Sharon talked about the plan for next week, right? Well, I don't remember when Sharon said that, but I know that she did, right? So I can actually search for Sharon plan next week, and it will come up with places that feel like that's a hit, and I can just watch the video from that point forward, which is way better than having to sift through for 90 minutes and try to figure out when Sharon said that, right? So all of those things are really important. The other side of it is just, and this isn't necessarily specifically on the COVID, sort of hybrid work and some of those things, but the nature of doing these virtual meetings now and recording many of them, the ability to go back and look at the decisions your teams have made over time is now captured and documented, right? Because it's going to do those transcriptions for you. I can search for that stuff. When did we decide that we were going to call this vendor, right? All of that stuff now is captured. We hope that people keep good notes at meetings. We know that that sometimes doesn't happen. And even if they do, did they keep them in a shared way that we can go find them 6 months from now? And so there's a bunch of great sort of things that by dropping that question, Miguel, like you opened up about 6 doors that I think were relevant to the conversation. So
yeah,
thank you.
I meant to do that. I didn't expect to. I didn't mean to take us down another path.
No, it's a great question. Great question.
No, that was great. That was great.
I know it's in preview.
Yep.
I know it's in preview. Is it in preview in all clouds or is it in just commercial right now? Do you guys know?
So the live captions are in preview,
Preview.
but the transcriptions after the fact are not in preview. So
Okay,
they
so
are
that
actually
exists
out
in
there.
all clouds. Okay.
Yep.
And the live preview, that's in or the live transcriptions, that's in preview. Is that just in commercial?
I'm pretty sure that's just in commercial.
I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I can check on that. But that one of the big things that helps with potentially, right, is any Americans with Disability Act concessions that need to be made as well, right? So
Well, one of the things with masks that people are talking about a lot lately is how much we have relied on lip reading, and we didn't realize that. And how much, maybe you didn't realize you had a hearing problem, or you didn't realize how much you couldn't hear because you were combining the lip reading that you were seeing with what you were hearing, and you were able to put things together. And so there's people that are coming out now saying, I can't hear as well as I thought now that everyone is wearing a mask, and I had no idea how much lip reading came to play and stuff like that. So something as simple as turning on these live transcripts in a meeting could just be so helpful to somebody and just reduce some of that stress and the friction that everybody is already feeling just in life right now. So just a little thing that can make such a difference for people.
yeah, and just one other little element to add to that real quick, and then we can get back on on task, which is not all remote user environments or rigs are the same, right? So that's another thing. So example, I've been working remotely for 15 years. I completely understand the value of a high quality headset and what that brings and how much easier that makes that to hear. But in cases, even let's just say you're not wearing masks, if you're just using your laptop's microphone and speakers, the quality at which you can understand is not nearly as high as those that are wearing, I'm wearing a $179 headset right now. And so that also brings up benefits for that as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we are now going to pass it on to Maria. Let me get some slides up here. And she is going to chat with us about how we can all stay together and stay connected while we're social distancing.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Martinez, and I feel really lucky because I get to talk about the fun part. As we are kind of working in these hybrid environments now, it's really important to be able to stay connected to our colleagues. It's not until everyone started working remotely from home and not being able to go into the office that people realized how much time they spent around water coolers or break rooms, talking to each other, discussing a show that they watched or, something that's going on at work. And, as people, we miss that interaction. So it's really important that we find ways to stay connected so that we are still having kind of that human interaction between our coworkers. So some of the ways that we can do that are by virtual meetups. We actually do this at Planet a lot, and we love our virtual happy hours. You can make it fun. You can come with different themes and ideas to those meetings, so people come prepared. I know we did one that was a Hawaiian theme, and we played around with, coming in with different shirts and stuff. And it just is nice to connect with people and have something to, talk about, laugh about. So you definitely want to try to make those fun. There are some games that you can add to virtual meetings as well. I know that we've done that as well, and that can be a lot of fun. So this is a great way to bring your team together. And we have some for our operations team, for instance. We have some for our Evolve team. So it gives us the opportunity not just to interact with the people that maybe we work with every day, but also gives us opportunity to interact with different departments, and we're still kind of seeing those people. You do want to have, some icebreakers ready. As Christy was talking about, sometimes it can be a little bit awkward. People don't know when to speak up, when they should say what. So if you have some icebreakers ready to go for those virtual meetups, that can be really helpful, right? Making sure that you're calling on people during those meetups so that you're kind of avoiding those awkward silences. So that's definitely something that you can do. You can do virtual lunch dates too. So if you want to have like a one-on-one, maybe you have a coworker that you had lunch with every day. Who says you can't still do that, right? You guys can get your lunch together, do a virtual meeting using Microsoft Teams, and still have lunch together and talk about non-work related items. And then, you know, the positives of sharing your positive experience of COVID, right? So that's something that we kind of forget about. We're so focused on the negative things that have come out of COVID, but I was talking to a coworker recently about how COVID and being able to work remotely has kind of brought our colleagues into our homes with us. So I've been able to learn, for instance, about people's pets or seeing people's children walk by, right? That's just become a common occurrence. So that's let us connect in a more meaningful way with each other, as opposed to when we're in the office and we don't really see that. And then kind of along the lines of seeing our children, consider having a littles call. So this could be an opportunity if you're working from home and your kids are home with you, bring them in and have them meet other children of other coworkers. They can get really excited about it. They feel like they're a part of what you're doing. They're understanding a little bit more about maybe what mom, dad does. So this can be a really great way to kind of connect. And again, give us as colleagues the opportunity to connect with each other. And then one of the things that I love is the thought of creating a virtual water cooler. So again, we can't go into the office anymore, you know, and as we start to kind of go into the office, you might run into break rooms, for instance, being shut down and having people not go in break rooms. So how do you kind of keep that social interaction? Well, if we embrace the technologies that are available to us, like Microsoft Teams, then there are some fun ways that we can still have conversations with our colleagues. So creating a virtual water cooler is a great way to do that. And it allows employees to find things that they're all kind of interested in, and you might learn something about a colleague that you weren't aware of before. So you can do book clubs, you can do recipe sharings. I've even seen people that have done fitness, and so they've worked out together, and that can be super motivating for people, just knowing that you have somebody there. It can also be a really great place to put any COVID announcements or just general announcements for the team in general. So if you have something that you want to communicate out to the staff about returning to work, maybe there's some new rules, maybe the office is set up differently when you go into the office, you can put that information on an announcements channel under your team, and you can communicate that out to your staff. So these are just some different ideas of things that you can do. And obviously, you know, each organization is going to be different and different things are going to speak to them. So, you know, think about what things would be appealing to your staff when creating those channels, and consider making that team public instead of private. Most of us, when we create teams, make private teams. But if you have the ability to make it a public team, it allows everyone within your organization to participate and to be a part of the team. All right, so I'm just going to show an example of a virtual water cooler that I created. Okay, hopefully everyone can see my screen. So what I did was I created a virtual water cooler here team. And again, I did make this a public team so that anyone could join. And these are just some different ideas of things that you can use for channels. I mentioned about, you know, having an announcements channel. So maybe there's some new policies for returning to work and you want to share those with your staff. So this is a great way to communicate with them. A lot of people ask about the general channel and they say, can I delete the general channel? What do I do with this general channel? I think it's really a best practice to use the general channel as a way to kind of set the tone for the team and give the team an opportunity to know kind of what you're supposed to do with within the teams and the channels. So this is just an example of something that you might, post on a general channel, just welcoming everybody and setting expectations for how the team is going to work. And then if you, have some different things that you want to share, maybe you have a book club and people can, post links to different books and discuss books, things of that nature. If they have movie or show recommendations, they can put those in the channels. And then shared recipes. Everybody loves to share recipes, so why not be able to do that within a virtual environment? And doing it in a virtual environment actually allows you to interact with a bigger population than maybe, a close-knit office space, right? So these are just some ideas, but again, you want to think about exactly how this would work for you, what channels would make the most sense for your staff, and you want to make sure that you put somebody in charge of this. So that they're viewing it, so that they are encouraging participation, and you want to generate a buzz around it so that you can encourage that social gathering within the virtual environment. And that's all I had.
Awesome. Well, those were our quick couple of demos that we have today. We did save time the last 10 minutes to answer any questions that you guys have. So I'd love to open the floor up for any questions. You guys can come off of mute or you can put them in the chat room. So we'd love to hear any questions that anybody has or any comments or feedback or anything there.
Hey, Jen, it's Bob. I don't have a question, but I just have a comment that I think is important, right? Some things that were brought up that resonated with me. So while obviously the whole, rush to broadly adopt these sort of work from home and hybrid working scenarios are new, the notion of working from home and hybrid work scenarios have been around for quite some time, particularly in the commercial world, right? And so the good news is there's lots of data on this, right? So one of the things you mentioned was the whole idea of, how that you were excited about seeing other people's kids, et cetera, in calls and things like that. And actually, the whole attitude towards that, since broad amounts of people have had to participate, have changed, because some of the feedback was stress and anxiety. One of the downsides of working from home was stress and anxiety over making sure things like you don't see my dog, my cat, my kids, any random noise, the fact that there might be somebody mowing the lawn outside, like all of those things that happen. Now that we're all at home, or large amounts of us are, we start to realize it happens to everybody all the time. And so actually just addressing that head on, like the idea of the Littles call or some of these things, taking 15 or 20 minutes to do things like this head on, actually reduces a bunch of stress and wasted productivity over being concerned about it. Right? It's totally okay. Now, look, we don't want, in the middle of a significant presentation, right? We don't want the children coming over and touching the keyboard or any of those things, right? We get that. But the fact that we might know they exist is something that we shouldn't have to worry about under the circumstances. We know kids were home from school. We know, now it's summertime, right? We know they're home, all of those things. And so if you don't put, if you remove the stigma, you actually remove a lot of wasted time being concerned about that. And that actually increases productivity, not reduces it. And there's real data on this, by the way. This is something that's been a cultural thing that was harder to get pushed through broadly in the past because, still the majority of people were working in the office, right? Where any of that, so you had that whole mindset, like seeing somebody's kid walk across your conference room would be very odd, right? But now that we're all at home, we've all had to deal with it. Look, we've seen it on television, for goodness sakes, right? So, it happens. And I think trying to address some of these things head on will reduce a lot of unnecessary stress for trying to maintain. We know it's not a normal environment, right? Things aren't normal now.
Yeah, and the kids love it. Maria's daughter, one time we have our Littles call, And bless her heart, Maria's daughter, we had to cancel because everybody was in training and we couldn't go, but I guess that didn't get communicated to her. And she picked up Maria's phone, and she knows how to use Teams, and she called me. It was fantastic, and we had a great little chat. And and then the very first thing she said to me is, "Why aren't you on video?" And it was great because she knew it was our time of day to talk, and we had a great little chat. So it works, and it's perfect because it gives, if the family can relax a little bit more, it just makes work just a little bit more easier. And these are the things that, the world is stressful right now. There's no way getting around that. So the easier we can make things for employees, that work-life balance, it's going to be so helpful. And there's so many easy tools inside of Office 365 that if we can show practical ways and we can reduce that workload, it's just going to make things so much easier for our users and really transform the way that they work and give them just a breath of fresh air to say, oh, okay, this is easy. Now I don't have to stress about how am I going to run these meetings when there's 10 different things to do. Oh, there's a whiteboard inside of Teams. Oh, there's meeting notes inside of Teams. Oh, there's transcripting I can turn on. There's all of these things, and we can guide them through how to do it to just make life a little bit easier. Awesome. There was one question about whiteboards, or not whiteboard. Yeah, the whiteboards. Where are the whiteboards saved, so that somebody can access them afterwards? Are they just saved with the meetings? I think Christy showed that.
Yes, so they are going to just be saved. Well, they're saved into your whiteboard app, so you can access them there, and then you can also just access them where your meeting recording and notes show up. They'll appear there, and then there's going to be a tab at the top of your meeting in your chat that will also say whiteboard, and it'll be displayed there as well.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right, any other questions before we pass it back to Bob to close us out? All right, I guess not. Bob, we're going to pass it back to you to just close us out.
Sure, you're going to throw up the just throw up the last slide, or the next to last slide, I think, and we'll just go ahead and close it out.
Am I not sharing? Okay.
No.
Okay.
No worries. So, hey, this was great. This is a slide, you can just stay right on here. This is really great, and I really appreciate the Evolve team and Jen, you taking the time out to go over some of these best practices. I think there's some really useful stuff here. I just want to close with, look, if you're still struggling with getting Teams enabled or Windows Virtual Desktop, which we didn't really talk about today, but certainly is a key component of this scenario, we do have offerings that allow to get these things up quickly. If you attended the call and you said, I'd love to do all this, but we don't really even have Teams enabled, we actually have sort of an abbreviated and focused rapid Teams adoption that allows you to focus on getting things out there in a safe and secure way, with enough capabilities to provide value, but maybe you haven't had time to think through every possible control and governance policy and all of those things. So the idea I liken it to is, hey, let's get out, a limited capability Teams, if you haven't got anything out yet, that's so we can start getting value from it. It's almost like using, a child-proof, playroom, or, giving your teenage son or daughter a car that doesn't go over 65 miles an hour, right? Just keep things under control, get it out there, and then we can come back and revisit and open up the entire thing. So it's dedicated at that and includes end user adoption capabilities from the Evolve team as well. Same is true on the Windows Virtual Desktop as well. So we have solutions to help you get further along. If you're not ready for that, of course, we have all the offerings that we've always had at Planet, which, for full rollouts, et cetera, if that's where you are. So I just want to make people aware of those. I really want to thank everybody for joining. This was a great topic. Thanks to the Evolve team. And I hope to have you back real soon to talk about another great end user focused topic. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.